Welcome to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, we hope you're subscribed to our channel. Today on the show, World Series picks and analysis from Anthony Dabbundo, NFL notes with Patrick Everson, plus reaction to the first college football playoff ranking of the year. But we start in the NBA as James Harden has joined his new team, the Clippers, who also received PJ Tucker and Filip Petrusev in a trade earlier this week. 76ers, in exchange, received Marcus Morris, KJ Martin, Robert Covington, and Nicholas Batum, in addition to multiple draft picks. Now for the debut of More Money with Matt Moore and Jay Money. Very excited for this. I want to dive into this trade a little deeper and what it means for both teams. Matt, we're going to start with you. How about the outlook for the Clippers side of things?
Yeah, I'm going to upgrade the Clippers by a half point in power ratings. And look, talking to NBA executives, there's kind of a disagreement on exactly, is James Harden still all that impactful? And some would say, look, he led the league in assists last season and shot 39% from three. Others would say, yeah, but he's always been able to get numbers. Can he really help you win in the playoffs? But this, that they need regular season performance and they need redundancy a little bit in case they are going to be missing guys, even though they've said they want to take the regular season a bit more seriously. I do kind of wonder, Kawhi Leonard's had a hard time getting through the regular season healthy, and it's hard for him to kind of play at a high level consistently throughout the regular season, but in the playoffs, he's a beast as long as he's not having knee surgery. Harden is a great innings eater. He gets through the regular season in great fashion, but he struggles in the playoffs. So I kind of wonder if Harden can carry him in the regular season and then Kawhi can carry him in the playoffs. Maybe that can balance out a little bit. I think this is a lot for them to add. It's going to be an interesting dynamic in terms of another ball dominant guy. Harden's shown he can sacrifice a little bit next to CP3. Like, he's already proven that in the past, so that's a little bit optimistic. Love the addition of PJ Tucker in this deal, adds small ball versatility, and as Maria noted when we were doing our pre-show meet, he's a dog, and so that helps a lot with, I think, what the Clippers actually need, which is a high-level competitor. The other thing to keep in mind here, they only really have four non-shooters right now in the rotation. Zubac, Russ, Plumlee, and that's about it. And then, maybe Amir Coffey, depending on the night that he's available. They gave up some depth here, but I think this is a pretty balanced team now. I'm going to upgrade them about a half a point. We'll see how they do. The big question, of course, is going to be, can they stay healthy? And, will Harden ask to be traded again in the next 3 months?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that Kawhi, Paul George, Russ Westbrook, and James Harden are all on the same team. Jay, does this, in your mind, put the Clippers in championship contention?
If they can stay healthy, I definitely think that it does. And one more thing, if James Harden can play the point guard first type of role, being a pass first point guard, it can really elevate this team, because that's really what they were missing. Obviously, Russell Westbrook is not a starting point guard. It's definitely not a pass first type of point guard. So if Harden can come in and kind of did what he did in Philly last year, which is make some threes, shoot above 35% from three, and be able to rack up 10, 11, 12 assists a night, I definitely think they have a high ceiling this year.
Not only what James was able to do with Philly and with Houston, as Matt noted, but people forget, because people want to forget, with the Nets too. He took on more of that point guard distribution role, and it was effective for them. But on the other side, Jay, what does this deal do for the Sixers besides separating Harden from his now nemesis, Daryl Morey?
Yeah, so the Sixers hadn't looked too bad to start this season, and then they added even more depth. I know that they lost PJ Tucker, but you added some other guys that can actually give you around 10 points a game, and guys like Nicholas Batum, maybe even Robert Covington, and even KJ Martin as well, Marcus Morris as well. So it gave them some added depth, but also gave them a lot of pieces to throw with some trades. And I'm hearing that they're looking at to get like a Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan. So this opens up for them to be able to make a trade here, and it also gives them more immediate depth right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It did hurt, I think, a little bit to see PJ Tucker going in that trade, because I do think he does things that might not show up on the stat sheet. Matt, where do you see the Sixers going from here?
So I think that they've added all these contracts of role players. It's notable that every player they added, KJ Martin, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum. They're all expiring contracts. Those are sometimes harder to offload to teams that are looking to rebuild. Like if you're trying to get a star and that team's looking to rebuild, it can be a little bit tougher because teams actually want some stuff on the books. So they're not trying to reach the floor in free agency and overpaying for a guy. But it does mean that they can offer them to maybe a team that's transitioning to that, maybe like a Chicago Bulls. There's already been reports that Zach LaVine is involved in at least the Sixers wish list for what they want to go after. OG Anunoby is another name that's been listed. I've heard Pascal Siakam is another name to keep an eye on. The other thing is there's probably going to be more names that pop up before the trade deadline, whether just given the nature of the NBA, and the Sixers will be in a good position to move in that direction. But I will say that around the league, the bigger question everyone kind of has is how does Joel Embiid feel about this? The vibes in the Sixers have been great to start the season. They've been played really great. Tyrese Maxey is making a huge leap. He's the favorite to win most improved player, and they've played really well to start the season. But if things start to go badly, is Embiid going to look at what they got in that return, how everything has gotten, and start to get a little itchy? And you've got New York and Miami both anxiously waiting for the first sign that Joel Embiid wants out. And if you're rolling your eyes and saying,
like I
can't believe we're going to have another NBA trade drama, the answer is yes. Yes, we will. Until the end of time, we will always have another NBA star trade drama.
I'm just rolling my eyes at the Knicks part of it because they inevitably always get mentioned. And I see these scenarios of like Embiid for like 17 Knicks players. And I'm like, why? Like, want no part of it. That's just me.
I will tell you, they're considered to be, they are considered to have the best package of assets of anybody. That's not just from the Knicks. That's from actual, NBA people. They can really consider that the Knicks, RJ Barrett, the picks package, the expiring contracts, they have a lot they can throw into a package. I think that's why. It's not a great package maybe, but it's got a lot of stuff in it. And that's why this might be different for them this time.
I'm not knocking the package. I fear for the Knicks. I'll just say that. But the NBA continues to keep us on our toes. Let's move on to tonight's action. Jay, why don't we get your pick?
So the Timberwolves plus a 2.5, and also have a little sprinkle on the money line as well here, Maria.
Okay, cool. What's more of your handicap for that and thinking behind that pick?
Yeah, so I mean, I love the Wolves in this spot. Obviously, this is a major game for this season. Now they're coming off a game where they had a huge letdown spot, right? They were up by 20 points in that game versus the Atlanta Hawks. At one point, they were outscored 65-25 and went up from being up by 20 to being down by 20 points as well. So this is a huge bounce back spot. Obviously, they have revenge on their minds as well after getting kicked out of the playoffs by the Denver Nuggets as well. And they were actually one of the teams that were able to handle the Nuggets a loss in their playoff run there. So I think I like the matchup for the Wolves with the two big lineup. I think they have key defensive pieces. And last point, they do have Jalen McDaniels and Naz Reid back this year. This is a really deep team. It's a really big game for them at the house. I think they hand the Denver Nuggets their first loss of the season tonight.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a sneaky good game, and how convenient. We got Matt Moore and our friend Brendan Glasheen on tonight's NBA Bet stream. This is the game at 8 Eastern, Nuggets T-Wolves. You can watch along with them on the NBA app and League Pass. Very exciting. That being said, Matt, what's your pick for tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to go the Pacers plus 11.5 versus the Celtics. Celtics is a double-digit favorite early in the season, last 3 seasons. Only 49% ATS. Not enough for me to really be compelled to bet against them, but it's also not a warning sign. Pacers, I think, are underrated in the market. They've outperformed expectations, so I think the power rating on them is a little bit off. Boston's shown a few cracks around the edges, and this Pacers team's coming off what's a pretty bad loss to the Chicago Bulls. I like them to get this one, or at least be able to hang with it. It's 11.5. That's a big number for early season versus the Pacers, who I consider to be a potential playoff team. So I'll grab the 11.5 with the Indiana Pacers. One note, do wait until tip off. Make sure that Tyrese Halliburton, who's questionable with illness, make sure that he's available for this game before you get your bet in.
Who doesn't want more money? Matt Moore, J Money. This was fun as anything. Can't wait to do this again. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Maria.
To baseball, Rangers have taken a commanding 3-1 lead in the World Series. It's been a magical run for them this postseason, particularly on the road. With a record 10-game win streak and impressive road splits in RBI and batting average, Corey Seager, Evan Carter, and Nathan Eovaldi have all been key contributors. And Anthony Dabbundo has been a key contributor for us here on GDD. Welcome back. Listen, what's gone wrong for Arizona in this series?
Look, I think Arizona will look back and look back at game one as kind of the game that they let slip away, right? They had a 5-3 lead going into the ninth inning with one out. Corey Seager hits the 2-run home run. And that, invincible Arizona bullpen that had dominated Philadelphia in the series prior, all of a sudden cracked for the first time. And they let that game slip. Both teams have a blowout now in this series after Texas won last night. Texas was always going to have a little bit of an advantage in game 4 just because they have more of a lineup depth to throw at these, bullpen arms that both teams were going with. Arizona did not have a real starter in the game. Andrew Heaney was solid. But remember, Arizona probably should have lost the bullpen game to Philadelphia last round too. So, this bullpen, when they've had to go beyond their 3 or 4 best relievers, has not quite held up. And we've seen in this series that they have not held up against this depth of this Rangers lineup. Although the other thing, you could say is, and baseball doesn't really work this way because of how pitchers are used in high leverage. Arizona has scored more runs than Texas in these 4 games. It's 22-21. And, we're a couple swings away from an even series. So it hasn't been a complete blowout, but it certainly feels like Texas has really taken control of the series since they shifted to Arizona, and they've got a chance to win their first ever World Series tonight. They're going to have 3 chances to do it in the next, 4 days if they need them.
Very true. Well, how are you betting the game tonight?
Yeah, so no opinion on the side or the total for me, but I do think at some point we're going to see that the innings have kind of caught up with Zach Gallen. Gallen had never pitched more than 184 innings coming into the season. This year, he threw 210 in the regular season. Then he threw 27 in the playoffs, his 4 playoff starts that he's made this year. And he has not been good in the last 3. Last 3 starts, 16 innings, just 10 strikeouts, 8 walks, 6.75 ERA, 18 hits allowed. He's given up a bunch of homers as well. I think Gallen has kind of hit the end of the road here, and he's kind of running on fumes. And you see it in the stuff plus numbers and the movement on some of his breaking balls. It's just not quite as crisp as it was in the first half of the season and really the first 2/3 of the season when he was a Cy Young contender level pitcher. So I think with Gallen showing some cracks and, wilting a little bit down the stretch here in his last few starts, I think there's some real concerns about how much depth they're going to really get from him tonight with Torey Lovullo. And so Lovullo has not used his best relievers, his 3 best relievers in game 2, 3, or 4. So they have not pitched the last 4 days because of blowouts and being behind. I think they have to get in. I mean, you're facing elimination. So if you can get 5 innings out of Gallen here tonight, you take it and you run, and then you go to Thompson, Ginkel, and Seawald to try to shut this down. And one other thing, to be concerned about is that the Diamondbacks don't want to get their longer relievers too exposed to this Rangers lineup. We've seen them get a ton of looks at them in the last couple games. So I do think at some point it's going to be the top guys if it's within a close game. If you're down, 5, 6, 7 runs, you're up 5, 6, 7 runs, then that's a different story. But any reasonably close game, you're going to see the top 3 relievers pitch probably the last 4 innings. So I don't think you can really expect Gallen to go particularly deep in this game. So I took his under 15.5 outs at -130 at DraftKings right now. It's available. I think that he gets, like a 5 and dive type outing unless he's truly, truly dominant. And I really don't think he will be, given what we've seen from him in the last few weeks.
I appreciate the pick, and I know you're not taking a side, but are you mentally prepared? I mean, could this be the end of baseball season tonight?
I am mentally prepared. And as I said at the beginning of the series, the Snakes are dead. The run is over. And I think Texas gets it done tonight. I do. I'm worried about Gallen and what we've seen from him in the last few weeks. I think Texas gets an early lead. Arizona keeps it tight, maybe makes a rally, but the Rangers will get it done tonight. I'm not betting it, though. I do think the market's right.
I love how you kept the sign and had it ready. Well done, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Over to NFL now. Check out odds to win the AFC North. Ravens, the favorite, of course, currently atop the division. The Steelers, Browns, and Bengals are next in the standings, respectively, though they all have the same record. And the Steelers are at +850, the Browns +450, Bengals +330. Very interesting. And with that, we bring in senior reporter for Vegas Insider, Patrick Everson, and we see how this AFC North division race is playing out on the field. How is that translating in the betting market?
Well, it's translating, Maria, to a lot of pretty even action. This is this is the closest of any of the division. No other division looks like the AFC North right now, and it's really fascinating. Got some numbers on Tuesday from BetMGM, and all 4 teams in the AFC North are getting between 20 and 30% of bets made. And the money is even more tightly bunched with all 4 teams between 22% and 27%. Again, this is at BetMGM. And Christian Cipollini, one of the traders there, said, we have so much action on all 4 teams that we don't have a need at the moment. He said the Bengals took the most action when they were the favorites. As you noted there at the top, the Ravens are now the favorites. He said it's just a tight division in which you can make a case for all 4 teams, which explains why we have even action. Now, I will say the liability is to the Steelers at those longer odds, but the liability is such that, you know, the way it's all bunched, it's apparently not much liability at all. As he says, we don't really have a need at the moment.
What are the other division futures markets that are seeing significant action just scattered across multiple teams?
Well, for starters, there's really, as I noted there at the top, at the beginning, while talking the North there's really no other division, Maria, that compares to this division. If you're looking at both ticket count and money, there's not that jumble. The AFC East definitely compares in ticket count. All 4 teams getting some attention between 20 and 31%. That's the range, which is a pretty narrow range relatively. But the Bills in the East are getting 58% of money, which that does surprise me a little bit, but I do think that is the New York betting market coming into play there quite a bit. There's going to be some regional bias there, and it's a huge market. So it's not all about just the Jets and the Giants, although the Jets contribute to that as well. The AFC South is the next closest to the AFC North in terms of how the money is being spread out, but it's not really that close. Interestingly, well, maybe not interestingly, not surprisingly, I should say, 44% of all money is on the Jags to win the AFC South. 37%, or I should say 44% of all tickets, 37% of all money is on the Titans, but then it drops way off for the Texans and the Colts. They're not seeing very much in the way of money on either of those teams. And then when you go to the NFC South, in which you've got no team above 500, the Saints are taking almost twice as many tickets as any other team at 48.2%, almost 50%, almost half of all tickets are written on New Orleans. And there's almost 4 times more money on New Orleans than any other team in the South at 64%. And in fact, the Saints ticket percentage, I noted that 48.2% of all bets to win the NFC South, that's higher than any other team to win any other division, the Lions being second in ticket count to win the NFC North at 47%.
Lots of betting going on in New Orleans, it seems, and I can probably
Yes.
guess, just based on the teams that have the best odds to win a title, you know, some of the obvious ones, but can you sum up the divisions where you're seeing action being more concentrated?
Right, and this probably won't surprise anybody, but the AFC West is the most lopsided at BetMGM, with the Chiefs landing 84% of all dollars bet in the AFC West going to the Chiefs, and the other 3 teams are just battling for scraps. In the NFC West, similar, not quite as high, but the Niners getting 75% of all dollars, which is a little bit interesting when you think about where the Seattle Seahawks are at the moment. But 75% of all dollars on the Niners. And then you go over to the NFC East, and the Eagles and the Saints, as I noted in the NFC South, they're in a dead heat at 64% of money to win each of those respective divisions.
Yeah, see, the Chiefs, Niners, Eagles, all top of the leaderboard when it comes to Super Bowl odds. So those definitely don't surprise me. But as we said, the Saints a little bit surprising.
It's a fishy. There's something going on in New Orleans. But I'm telling you, I've had, you know, BetMGM and others tell me now that New Orleans market is it is a on fire market.
Clearly. Well, before we let you go, one more question, because we did have some news in the NFL this morning. The Raiders firing Josh McDaniels. Have people been betting the Raiders any differently?
I don't know that they're betting them any more or less. There was a move from 2.5 to 1.5 at most books. And one odds maker, Casey Degnan at the Superbook, told me that, again, a 1-point move, but he noted that move still has the Raiders as a 1.5-point favorite in this game, going from 2.5 to 1.5. He said the Raiders fire their coach and move to a rookie QB, and yet the Giants still aren't favored in this game. And another odds maker, Zach Lucas with Twin Spires, said, look, that's, you know, it is unusual, but the public is still siding with Las Vegas in this game, which tells you exactly how bad people think the Giants are.
Yeah, what's unusual about it is how unusually bad the Giants are. Raiders are 3-5, bottom 10 of the NFL standings. Giants 2-6, dead last in terms of total offense and points per game. It's just lovely here in New York. Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Have a great week.
The first college football playoff rankings were released Tuesday night. Ohio State is in the #1 spot, while two-time defending national champion Georgia is #2. Michigan is #3, followed by Florida State at 4, Washington at 5, and Oregon at 6. As we bring in our college football experts, Collin Wilson and Brett McMurphy, I want to get your reactions to these rankings. Collin, why don't we start with you?
Well, Ohio State deserves to be #1 based on who they've beaten so far this year, but Ohio State's not winning the national championship. They don't have the explosiveness. They don't have the offense. They're struggling down the stretch to get by some of these teams. It's going to be, it's very interesting because nobody on the committee that would talk last night would say this is the best team in college football. Nobody thinks that they are, and they will trip up at some point. Oregon is the team that I think is going to make the playoff. They're going to slip in after winning the Pac-12 here. If I had a prediction on who the Final Four are going to be, it would be Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Oregon. So I would bet that appropriately.
How about you, Brett?
There's one consistent factor with the rankings every week, Maria, and that is how inconsistent they are. And I agree with Collin. Ohio State should be ranked #1 right now. I don't think they're going to win the national title, but the committee's not supposed to project or predict how they think the season will play out. They're just supposed to rate the teams based on what they've done so far. The biggest problem I've had every single year is that they judge teams differently. They rated Ohio State #1 because they have 2 top 25 wins. They put Georgia at #2 and Michigan at #3. They have no top 25 wins. They've only beaten 2 teams with winning records, but they passed the so-called eye test. How about Florida State? Florida State has 3 wins over teams with winning records, more than Georgia and Washington, and they have a win over a top 15 LSU. Where's Florida State? They're all the way back at #4. So they want to credit Ohio State for beating top 25 teams. They don't credit Florida State, and then they don't penalize Georgia and Michigan. So look, bottom line is it's a TV show. It runs every week. We get outraged. None of it matters. It's meaningless until we get to the final one, Selection Sunday in December.
Fair enough. Maybe lacking some consistency in the process on a week-to-week basis. But let's look ahead to the weekend. One of the marquee matchups has Georgia hosting 12-ranked Missouri. That's on Saturday afternoon. Collin, let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, neither of these teams are going to be able to establish the rush. Missouri's just been a little inept at it. Georgia's going up against the teeth of the Missouri defense, which specializes against the rush. So you can see a lot of success happening in the pass game for both. Both Brady Cook and Carson Beck have high success rate and EPA, which is explosiveness against their opposing coverages. And really, this comes down to 2 of the best slot receivers in all of college football, with Dominic Lovett, a former Missouri wide receiver, and Luther Burden for Missouri. And, what's going to happen here is they're both going to have explosive passes, explosive plays, and Georgia right now is clicking on all cylinders on offense. I like the over in this game. Biggest key number in college football totals is 55. You can try to get the best of that.
Brett, is there a way that you would pick this game?
I agree with Collin as far as the over. I actually like Georgia minus a little bit more than 2 touchdowns. Look, Georgia is going to remember that last year Missouri gave Georgia one of their toughest tests. Missouri led 22-12 in the 4th quarter before Georgia rallied late. Ultimately, Georgia has been able to turn it on and when they need to. They did it last week against Florida, and anybody that had concerns about what the offense would be without Brock Bowers, they looked pretty good. 43 points, 486 yards against Florida. Georgia knows this is a big game. My only concern is if there's any kind of flat spot coming after the big win against Florida. But keep in mind, Kirby Smart gets up usually for these bigger games against ranked opponents. Kirby Smart 27-14 against the spread. I like Georgia minus 15.
Okay, definitely some good things to look out for. Any other picks you like for this week, Collin?
Yeah, on Thursday Night Football, let's go with TCU +3. I think this is a number that's going to drop closer to pick. And new quarterback Josh Hoover, he had a field day against BYU. He had, I think, 4 touchdowns on the day, just looked like he could compete for the Heisman Trophy. And then has had some duds outside of that. And the reason he dominated BYU is not just because of how bad BYU is, but because BYU runs cover 3. Texas Tech runs an extreme amount of cover 3. So I expect Josh Hoover to have a lot of success against that. The Texas Tech defense has just been lifeless lately. They're outside the top 100 and creating havoc. They're also 112th in broken tackles allowed, which means anytime TCU runs or gets into open space, they're going to be able to break some tackles and get some scores. So I like TCU +3 on Thursday night.
Sounds good. A little Thursday night football. Brett, pick for you?
You're gonna have to wait for Saturday for my pick. If it's not broke, don't fix it. On BBOC, I went against BYU on the road at Texas. Texas covered. I'm going against BYU at West Virginia. West Virginia 10-point favorite. BYU has been dreadful on the road. They've been winless on the road, except, yes, sorry, Collin, I keep bringing it up. They won at Missouri. But as far as Big 12 play, winless on the road, back-to-back road games, and now you've got BYU going all the way across the country, only their second trip ever to Morgantown. West Virginia's playing really good right now. If not for a Hail Mary, they'd be competing for the Big 12 title. Who would have ever thought that before the season? I think West Virginia takes out some frustrations from the past couple of weeks against a BYU team that I think is wearing down in their first season in a Power 5 conference.
Well, we don't mind waiting until Saturday for you. Brett, Collin, thanks so much for joining Green Dot Daily. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's all for this Wednesday edition of Green Dot Daily. I'll be out the next 2 days, but Megan Payton will have you covered at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app. Once again, I'm Maria Marino, and I'll see you back here Monday